Alrighty. Blade of the House of Spiders Ryoshu is 3 pages of pure unfiltered bullshit. So unfiltered, in fact, they had 3 fixes to do before launch in the kit reveal. That said, we have the most premium team killer alive now. She doesn't exactly use allies as ammunition like Felbullet Yi Sung, but she does have plenty to gain from House of Spiders deaths. All of them, to boot. This script needed about a 50% rewrite the moment the numbers came out. I thought she'd be harder to use, but actually no. She just commits murder impossibly fast. Now, these kinds of gimmicks usually take an ungodly amount of time alongside a bunch of hoops and loops to get going. No, we honestly don't have to try, she's just that filthy. All of that said, before I get too far into the barriers regarding play patterns, we should talk about how her kit currently functions. Taking heavily after her adopted daughter during Kanto 9, this Ryoshu shares a lot of capabilities with the Pinky Nurse Father, especially in being the Dihui Star. Being a bad end Capstone ID as well as a modern ID though, we'd best start at the passives, there being 4 plus a support passive. Though this feels like a lie, as if we read through each individual part, it's closer to being 17 to 20 plus actual effects. I stopped counting after a bit, but there's just that much crammed into this thing. Pretty much an entire team's worth of stuff. The first passive is Psyche. I think this is the longest passive in Limbus thus far, at least the longest we've had on an ID, and this thing is always on. Anyhow, this is gonna take a bit. You can probably play the full version of Psyche twice before I finish explaining this. Starting out, it gives Ryoshu 2 unique buffs upon entering an encounter for the first time, these being Entanglement and String Severance. Entanglement is an odd one, being able to scale its minimum and maximum, mainly from her enhanced skill 3. It interacts with 5 out of 8 of her skills, mainly granting echo damage based on stacks, alongside a ridiculous amount of benefits. All that to say, this is her first engine and we want to fuel this as much as possible. Thankfully, entering an encounter with House of Spiders identities in loadout increases both the minimum and maximum entanglement, giving us a jump start as long as we have them selected as either deployed or in backup. Currently, this is starting at 2 with a maximum of 6. With all 6 members present. As it raises by 1 for every 3, we need 2 more House of Spiders IDs to max this effect out. After all, it includes herself, so we're logically at 7 right now. Beyond there, those House of Spiders IDs act as meat shields for Ryoshu. She transfers HP taken to House of Spiders IDs that have the lowest current HP percentage. If you decide not to team kill, this is up to 10 HP bars for her alone, at least when we get everyone else in the house. On top of that, she can't go below 1 on the turn that brings her there, pretty much unrelenting. That said, I should first outline that other buff we gained on encounter starts before the next huge block of text. String Severance. It is a counter for how many Nurse Fathers have gotten nuked. It gains a stack every time a Nurse Father dies and offers us unique effects based on House of Spiders allies' deaths. On top of all of that, we take less damage for every stack, currently up to 15%. In future, 30%. Basically, we want to kill off more of said House of Spiders allies to buff up Ryoshu as soon as possible, for a whole host of effects. More importantly though, we gain entanglements when one of them dies. Reminder that entanglement is our first and main engine, but if this is how we boost its gain, then so be it. Let's kill the house to gain its benefits. Those benefits are the following. For Ri and Sung, this is an unbreakable, while dealing 10% more damage with unbreakables. This is bloody strong stuff since we have a lot of unbreakable access. For Sora Dawn, this is 2 additional poise gain and applying sinking on crits. Not the most insane, but sinking as a tertiary effect is still ridiculous, if only for lowering SP and enabling easier clashes. Next is Kira Ishmael. This offers defense level and 1 more burn potency to base skills. Pretty alright. Status infliction is appreciated, and since we're burning down IDs anyway, defense level is heavily appreciated. Next is the Ring Duo. Callisto Lu gives us somatic fission inspiring melody, that one buff that was originally unique to Ring members upon hongers using closing time. This is an extra minimum and maximum speed, a clash power, and 10% damage. The clash power will be very important later as we go over her skills. Albina Faust, on the other hand, offers shielding equal to 10% of HP at turn start. This one isn't the most useful until later since we want to transfer damage first, but as we start losing team members, we'll want this as a failsafe. 10% shield is a bloody lot though. Last is Ren Claire. Arguably he has one of the most useful effects, granting 1 poise and critical damage at the start of every turn. This is 10% damage and the mitigation of poise decay, something that will truly shine as things get going and Ryoshu begins getting consistent crits. She goes very poise negative without relevant support, unfortunately. Beyond there is the main fix to game plans that involve killing off our sinners. In this case, a way of granting Ryoshu the leftover skill slots in an encounter. When there are no more IDs left in the backline to either return or substitute in, Ryoshu gains skill slots based on the number of House of Spiders IDs that have kicked the bucket. 1 skill slot for every 3 that die. Currently, this means getting 2 more skill slots, 3 more later. This effect cannot exceed the skill slot limits of an encounter, but it does activate regardless in pretty much all content. This lets her be an exceedingly effective solo, even when starting with an entire team. Aside from that, she has an OST change when certain conditions are met. This changing the battle music until turn end with the exception of a few select encounters. All that is just her first passive. How many times did you get through Psyche in the meantime? Beyond there, we're looking at space-time after image collapse. On turn start, we inflict a phantom trace on a random enemy, similar to Mark of the Prescript. Only we can inflict more phantom traces based on how many dead House of Spiders there are, inflicting 1 more for every 3 dead allies, up to 3 targets in the end. As for phantom trace itself, it's a debuff that increases damage taken from Ryoshu's base attack skills by 5%. Just a tiny smidge. Regarding the other 2 parts of this passive, if an enemy with Phantom Trace is the main target of one of her base skills, she'll use her skill 2-2 on it as an unopposed attack. She does this only once per turn. Aside from that, on use, she turns all coins from base skills unbreakable against said Phantom Trace targets, alongside gaining final power. In addition, she gains an entanglement. This is just the index bonuses on steroids alongside some very generous conditions for more entanglements. Anyhow, next up is Dihui Star, the bright star of the water margin. This details for the most part how we cheat out 2 different enhanced skill frees, starting out when we first reach 50 plus Dihui Star's Blade. We activate her skill 3-3 Rend Space String Connection against a random enemy at the very end of a turn, only once per encounter. Dihui Star Blade is a tracker that totals up the amount of Blade Trail after image that we have inflicted with Ryoshu. We can only gain 25 stacks of it per turn, leading to a few important breakpoints down the line. Regardless, this makes up our secondary engine. Tracking how much Dihui Star Blade can be generated at a given time will dictate our access to nukes. As for Blade Trail after image, certain skills can apply it, and it causes the target to take 1% more damage from slash skills for every 10 stacks. Currently, we aren't in any short supply for slash skills with the House of Spiders. This is pretty much a team amplification. Beyond there, once we hit the condition and let rip the skill 3-3, he then gains a new set of effects, those being the inability to retreat from this encounter and her new skill free cheat, that being at turn end with 50 plus Dihui Star's Blade, we replace a skill with her skill 3-2. As per usual, it prioritizes the skill at the leftmost bottom row on the dashboard. Due to the requirements overlapping, this means that she will have her skill 3-2 the turn after her skill 3-3 is used. Finally, as the Dihui Star, he is considered an ID that inflicts burn, bleed, and poise, a bloody triple status ID. As you'll soon see though, most of her focus is tied into poise, a moderate bit of burn, and a modicum of bleed, mostly in that order. Last of concern to us today is her fueled passive, After Image Reverberation. She deals more critical damage with her base skills for surplus poise past 20 on herself. Up to 10 gets counted for a 10% boost in damage. Aside from that, on crits, she inflicts Blade Trail After Image, further increasing the output of said debuff, though it is only a single instance of it. Finally, her Capstone Ego, Great Trichiliocosm's Ego passive, can be activated through targeting allies, that more specifically being critical damage up on kill. Oh, as for that support skill, it's poise potency for an ally earliest in deployment, a somewhat similar role to Maidenshu, though that one is poise count for the last deployed. Alrighty, we can finally look at her base skills. There is 8 of them. 2 skill 1s and 2s, 3 skill 3s, and a defense skill. Due to the way these interact, I should actually start with her defensive skill, Phantom Step. This is a Pride Evade that targets a House of Spiders ally on combat start, latest in deployment. The targeting is extremely important thanks to what this triggers. With at least 1 string severance, she also targets an additional ally, letting her team kill faster. Anyhow, the moment they're all done with their skills or are staggered, Ryoshu will use her skill 1-2 against them. Yes, this is is friendly fire, and yes, this is the best way to erase a member of the House of Spiders. Multiple even, with enough string severance. We'll finish the rest of the evade first before we get to that though. Importantly, the targeting prioritizes Sinclair last, despite him having one of the better buffs. Since he is 4 times weak to Fell Bullet though, we've got other means of ending him rightly if we desperately need to do so. Beyond there, this evade gives poise count at combat start and potency on a successful evade, much like said Sinclair. As for her skill 1-2, Play the Heavens, Tiansha. This is that super cool and fancy Arayashiki slash that we see used in the trailer, used against her allies. First off, it's unclashable and doesn't proc defensive skills. We aren't suddenly going to see an assist defense or get slapped by a counter for using this. In addition, it deactivates allies' base factors for decreasing sanity while using this skill, meaning we aren't about to eat shit for killing teammates. Troublingly though, on use we lose offense level for the encounter, but supplement it with base power. While this potentially means losing out on clashing power and damage, the base power offsets the loss for clashing, and we've got plenty of percentage damage elsewhere if extra base power isn't enough as is. That and well, it's a single offense level rather than free lost, so we're profiting quite a lot. Anyhow, on kill, it's an SP heal and gaining Entangled Life, that being a buff originally unique to her Great Trichiliocosm, granting her up to 10% more damage with base skills and flushing out for a ridiculous amount of extra damage on ego use. With a way of gaining it here without using the ego, she can build it up earlier. Aside from that, the 1 coin on this skill inflicts Blade Trail after image, adding to our Dehui Star Blade stacks, as well as dealing fixed 120% HP damage to the House of Spiders ally caught in the mess. This means we functionally have an execute button on demand. Nothing is surviving that. Even with ungodly high amounts of shielding, outside of MD or invincibility during story, this basically guarantees a dead House of Spiders ally. 2 or more even if multi-slotted and with string severance. Anyhow, let's get to the rest of her kits. The actual skill 1 is Triple Slash. It's a free coiner with free bloody on use conditionals and some stacked coins. The first on use is coin power for poise. The second is dual status for burn and bleed, the former being real stable and reliable to make use of. Essentially, she benefits off of free statuses directly. This is some stupid amounts of scaling for power at the very least, so long as we can upkeep both poise and burn. We can likely forget about bleed. She rolls stupid high with 12 base, going to 14 with dual status and 17 with poise. Add on the extra base power from Tiansha and Phantom Trace, and it's around 22 on the clash over free coins of 14, 18, and 22. The fuck is this skill 1? This is your reminder that Claim Your Bones is only 8, 12, 16, 20 for that 56 total, but with stacked as hell damage conditionals. This is only 2 base damage short of that, and it's her skill 1. Beyond there, the final on-use condition is free poise count. Still negative thanks to decay, but that can be alleviated later. Going further, the first coin gains poise and deals 2 bleed count on crit. The second coin gains poise and deals 1 burn count on crit. The third coin gains poise and inflicts 2 blade trail after image and even more blade trail after image equal to entanglement on self. It also inflicts bleed potency on crit and deals a slash damage echo equal to entanglement times 2 percentage of this final coin's damage. This is stupid for a skill 1 as it is. The only thing missing would be some kind of damage increase, but poise more or less fills that role alongside her myriad buffs and debuffs. All that to say, power creep is a bitch, and while this doesn't initially look it, just combined all of the tiny little extra damage buffs together, and you realize the horror on display. The skill 2 is Triple Slash, Echo Shear. Again, this has free on-use conditions, mirroring the previous skill. Coin power for poise, dual status burn and bleed for final power, and finally poise count, enough for the coins but not enough for decay. For all intents and purposes, this is an amped up version of the previous skill, but targeted at potency instead while offering higher base power. This offers on the first coin poise on hit and bleed on crit. The second deals burn on hit, bleed on crit, while the third does the same, but has that slash damage echo on crit based on entanglement, this time dealing an echo equal to 3 times entanglement in percentage. Again, this doesn't have damage increases written into it, but with all the small spots we get damage from, it all adds up dramatically. As for the stacked version with all conditionals active, it's around 16, 21, 26 for 63 raw power. Not a crazy increase over the skill 1, but the damage echo is definitely more prevalent. Now for the skill 2-2 Inevitable Termination, it is added on top of the first skill every turn, thus giving her a ridiculous amount of value to every skill slot, at least the first skill that can target someone with Phantom Traces. On use, it gains poise count, essentially paying for itself. Normally, it then slaps with 1 coin. Head coin dealing more damage on critical hits and inflicting blade trail, more with entanglements, and activating burn on target. This becomes increasingly annoying as it doubles burn count consumption every turn, tripling it thanks to some later skills even. It also inflicts slash fragility on crits. All of this applies of course, before a regular base skill slaps it. This weirdly does not affect how she gets an extra base power or even unbreakables, meaning Rian's passive gets to eat really good. That said, if the reason this skill procs is from a skill free, it'll grab the attack weight of the skill and hit all targets with Phantom Trace. With this skill, it'll specifically prioritize targets with Phantom Trace for the attack weight as well, allowing you to get the most out of it. Aside from that, this rolls up to 19. Pretty much giving her that extra in raw power every turn. This is stupid. Finally, onto the needlessly flashy parts of her kits, the skill frees. Yes, there are multiple here. We'll be covering the regular skill free first, the skill 3-3 second, and the skill 3-2 last, since that is more or less the order we have access to these in. The original skill-free Rend Space is a 1-coiner with 6 on-use conditionals, an attack end conditional, and 6 effects on the bloody coin. 13 different things to care about. The first one is final power for poise, the second one is base power for burn and bleed, the third one is more damage for entanglement, the fourth is gaining poise, the fifth is gaining attack weight for every 2 entanglement on self, and the last on-use conditional is the bullshittery that is dealing more damage for every excess attack weight beyond the number of actual targets. And at attack end, it will randomly inflict blade trail after image equal to entanglement on self plus 10 between the targets hit by the skill. As for the coin itself, it deals more damage on critical hits, and on hit inflicts bleed and burn potency. On crit, however, it'll activate burn and bleed on targets, reducing their respective counts by 1. It'll also deal that slash damage echo based on entanglement times 4 in percentage from this coin's damage. A lot of screaming. And that's just the default version we get in our skill buckets. Functionally, this is a 37 roller when maxed out, having 15 extra power in conditionals with 10 from status, and 5 from Tianxia alongside Phantom Trace. That may sound low after the other two, but this has in-baked damage conditionals around 105% for entanglement alongside attack weight. Functionally, plugging this at 75 raw power when the conditionals are maxed out, not to mention an extra 50% crit damage and the bloody echo. Yeah, this hits like a motherfucker. The skill free that we cheat out the first time we reach enough Tiphxodia's blade is Rend Space String Connection. This one is instead a 2-coiner and is unclashable. Reminder that this procs against a random target at the very end of turn. On use, it gains us Poise Potency as well as Shin. The Tiphxodia's Shin provides 4 benefits: 2 minimum and maximum speed, 2 poise potency, and 1 count stims to base skills, eliminating decay issues, 10% extra critical damage, and finally 20% less damage taken from unopposed attacks and unbreakable coins. Now that's not all for this skill. It removes her first stagger threshold on attack and to boot. She only has 1 of those to begin with. She becomes unstaggerable outside of some whack edge cases. Beyond there, the first coin inflicts burn and bleed potency, the second coin on crit activates burn on target. With no other conditionals, this is only really going to get +2 to 3 from Tianxia, and maybe +1 more if you somehow didn't expend the Phantom Trace. You can't get the full benefit from Tianxia's base power because she would already breach past the activation requirements after the third one. That is to say, this isn't really something for damage, just a fancy enabler that lets her go full sicko mode from here on out. As for the real star of the show, the skill 3-2, and it's currently incomplete. That super fancy version in the trailer, we can't use that yet, not until we get another 2 Nurse Fathers. While I'm pissed that this is another incomplete ID, it's not like Lord Honger's came out completely feature-stacked either. Anyhow, shockingly, this only has 3 on-use conditions, though those conditions are really strong ones. First off is the conversion of String Severance on self into coins. Yes, for every dead Nurse Father, Ryoshu gets to use the first coin of this skill an additional time. Unfortunately, we lose base power to gain these coins, but we happen to gain, well, 4 base power from Tianxia and 1 from Phantom Trace anyway, so did we really lose anything at all? At current, we only get 2 extra coins out of this, turning this 2-coiner into a 4-coiner. When we have 2 more Nurse Fathers, we can get a bloody 6-coiner as per the trailer, reusing the first coin 4 times before dropping the second coin. Anyhow, the final coin used here gains entanglement on self as additional coin power, making the last hit the most potent one. The last on use condition is dealing more damage for every excess attack weight beyond actual targets, because of course every big AoE has this now. We've got 2 attack and effects here. First is raising entanglement's minimum and maximum stack by 1 or resetting down to the minimum. Meanwhile, the second is consuming Dihui's Star Blade, causing us to work it up again to cheat this skill out. The first coin that gets reused up to 4 times in future is very vanilla. It gains poise counts, making it potentially positive, and inflicts bleed and burn potency. Repeats 2 more times for now, 4 times in the future when Matthias and Valencina swing by. As for the final coin, after all the repeats, it deals more damage on critical hits, before bursting all Blade Trail afterimage for a damage echo on hit. On crit, it also deals the slash damage echo based on entanglement, like most of the rest of her skills, and finally activates both bleed and burn on target. For the exact math here, it's very exceedingly stupid. Let's go with what we have for now, then afterwards the potential from having all the Nurse Fathers. At base with full Tianxia and Phantom Trace, that's a 21 base for a 22 plus 31 with our current max entanglements. Now let's max out String Severance. That's -2 base power for 20, 21, 22, 31. We are currently at 94 raw power before adding damage sources. Now if we try to add everything up, I am definitely going to fuck up the numbers, but let's see. 10% from Shin, 10% from Blade Trail Afterimage, 100% from excess attack weight, 20% from a crit, 30% more in the final coin from said crit, 10% from Somatic, 10% from Rian, 10% from Sinclair, 5% from Phantom, 10% slash fragility from Inevitable, 10% more from excess poise, a double echo of 10% and 32% currently, 195% to 225% damage increase, a 10% echo, and status explosion. My head fucking hurts. Assuming 1x resistances and forgetting about fucking offense and defense level, ballparks around 330 damage. Status currently adds another 198 to that as well. This isn't even the final form. This is just what we currently have. For the final form, that is closer to -4 base to start us at 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, and 32 for 132 base. The only other math that changes is the second echo, now going up to 36. It's 295-ish for the first few, 447-ish ballparking, 198 extra from status caps if you somehow get there. Yeah, this thing is filthy. Not exactly Furioso filthy, but since you can gain 25 Dihui Star Blade a turn, you can get this every 2 turns thereabouts, even if she consumes 50 of it. If she has the slots, she can get back 25 easily. Even then, there's a 20 buffer, with 70 being the cap on this particular stack. She outputs this damage casually, only really caring that poise exists compared to everything else. That is all of her kits. Now for recommended egos, and well, there's going to be a lot since Ryoshu has bloody fantastic egos for this ID, not to mention the season Capstone directly fitting in here. Forest to the Flames is always relevant. Here it's burn, fragile, and a single smidge of extra damage the turn after she kills an enemy. While the latter part is more useful in horde encounters, the former is the main appeal being a stickier fragile. It's cheap, and she can fuel this by herself even when it's time to go solo. Next is the Tef slots. Here we've got 2 options, one being set and forget, the other needing a little more proactive use. Blind Obsession basically fixes her poise problems in one go without having to resort to Foracalgia. If you're expecting her to end up solo, this is the easiest option to just set and forget. The Awakening and Corrosion aren't of any special use to us, but the passive lets her offset free poise count so long as it's a pride skill. Since she'll almost always use her skill 2-2 in a focus encounter, we're getting an extra poise count back at almost all times. Otherwise, the skill 2 itself will be up to 3 poise count healthier, 2 if skill 2-2 lands before it. Still plenty to write home about. On the other hand, we've got Red Eyes. This one is bind, plus coin drop, and slash fragility. It's significantly harder to fuel, unfortunately, as it requires 2 sin affinities we have scarce access to. Compared to Blind Obsession, that we would only use once, this gets more value from active use. Personally, I'd just take Blind Obsession, even if the bind is nice to have early on, since if the eventual goal is to solo Ryoshu, everything will eventually target her anyway, and anything that goes unopposed is just a bonus for us if it hits an apprentice or nurse father. Now the he slot has two very strong contenders for Ryoshu, 4th Match Flame and Foricalgia. We'll go over Foricalgia first as it's a bit more obvious in use case. It pretty much stabilizes her poise from the moment it is used. You can also use it to friendly fire with its corrosion. This lets you ramp up your game plan dramatically thanks to being able to easily harm your own allies, especially with its priority targeting. The main issue, however, is the resource cost is bloody expensive at 12 for the overclock, with 8 of that being Pride. While we're not exactly lacking for Pride, with that skill 2-2 going off constantly, it is still bloody expensive. It does, however, deal self-damage first, which should be transferred to an ally, followed by attempted murder. This functionally acts as super premium ramp and is recommended for shorter encounters or plans where you need to kill off a lot of allies, such as the full complement of 9 House of Spiders Sinners. Now on the flip side, we've got 4th Match Flame. This thing just got its Fred Spin 5 and is a heck of a lot cheaper to fuel compared to Foricalgia. While it's not as useful for killing off allies in comparison, it is very cheap and has a very disgusting passive, that being every 4th skill gaining 4 final power and inflicting 4 burn on hits. This has since further been boosted to absolutely disgusting levels now, since it adds 20% extra damage to Wrath's skills based on burn. It also conveniently gives you 10 SP back for ego use, or likewise negates SP for ego use, provided you countered properly. Now, initially this may seem limiting, as you only get 1 or 2 skill slots in most fights, but since this Ryoshu takes on dead House of Spider slots when backup runs dry, well, you can abuse the passive every turn. This is pure disgust, especially if you can keep track of and otherwise abuse which skill is about to get its benefits. So the choice comes down to whether you wish to ramp towards the murder plan more seamlessly, or if you'd prefer to cap it off with an oppressive amount of extra power. Personally, I'll be taking 4th Match Flame, as Pride will likely be used elsewhere with the plan I have in mind. In this case, Blind Obsession acts as your poor man's poise generator. Besides, once she has Shin, most poise issues should pretty much erase themselves. More so with Blind Obsession in tow as well. Now for the WoW slot, you're taking her Capstone. Great Trichiliocosm, almost no doubt. But let me first make a case for Contempt Orb. This one requires some more proactive use, but on the turn you plan to abuse this, slot it down first and make sure she can get a 6 resin of any other skill affinity. This grants her 7 Contempt of Gaze, which increases her damage by an absurd amount. In practice, this is 49% extra damage to 3 other skills besides her ego. In a solo, this is a stupid amount of extra outgoing damage, alongside giving us a lot of ego resources to work with on the tail end. You can continue to burst this out as needs must, especially as she gains the ego resources to use it again and again. Just watch the sanity cost. That said, it doesn't directly interact with the kits, it just heavily supplements it as a ridiculous damage spike for her skills. Now for the Capstone, this one is probably the most obvious to use, I suppose. It carries triple status and benefits from all 3 of them. She also, of course, gets benefits from killing her teammates after making use of this. Anyhow, this helps stabilize poise a little, then nukes out damage. Now with the high cost of 12 ego resources, we would not be aiming to use this particularly early. Instead, I reckon this works best as a nuke after several allies have already died. Wherein Ryoshu has used her skill 1-2 to stack up Entangled Life, alongside stacking it by normal means up to the cap of 999. Letting it rip after that point means getting such an absolutely ridiculous damage multiplier out of this that it will likely feel almost unfair, all things considered. Alternatively, this is your panic button. Due to being able to rack up a stupid amount of poise with this, in combination with her Shin and either Blind Obsession or Foricalgia, she is going to have a lot of excess poise to burn. Here you can nuke through 20 of it for a 20% heal on the corrosion before letting rip with an even bigger nuke. While the base isn't as insane in comparison, the multipliers are bloody stupid. Regardless, if you want a single delete button, instead of needing to plan out a proper nuke turn with Content 4, use this instead. It does everything you need it to do while providing a safety line. You can also perfectly fuel this on her own even when solo, without needing to be at the mercy of ego resource RNG from Content 4's conversion. All that aside, what's the team looking like? Are we incorporating any status into here? Perhaps even making a triple status team? Full on House of Spiders factionalism? Perhaps a mix of both? Well, with all intents and purposes, I'm going with the mix of both. Oddly enough, it'll be a team involving sinners that don't even have their House of Spiders IDs yet, or rather are unlikely to ever get them. Let's speedrun the House of Spiders and how we can get the most out of them before they inevitably perish. Rian Yisung. If the aim isn't to get Furioso off with him at any points, we can actually leave him off the field to start and have him be the second nurse father to arrive as needed. That said, when he does arrive, aside from building to Furioso if at all possible, he's going to be our fell bullet dispenser to kill Sinclair out of order as something of a tech. Sora Dawn. We're actually going to keep her alive for quite a while. As an apprentice, she's not super high priority to kill off, especially since her benefits don't start until we can even crit anything. Even though she offers some poise potency gain, if we don't balance our count with the criticals, it'll hurt more than help. Her support passive is also nowhere near as useful since our sources of gloom are going to run dry without her and Rian Sung to back things up. That said, she's going to unleash Ego State fast and deal as much slash damage while she can to any target with blade trail after images sticking out of them. Kira Ishmael. She's going to be something of a wet noodle in this team composition. That said, she'll likely be the second apprentice to kick the bucket because of that. Initially, she can help out with status requirements, leveraging bleed and burn to our favor. The spread of sin affinities also helps out in fueling some egos to boot. Past there, as a member of the middle, she can keep tanking hits with her counter until inevitable death, either by slashing or just getting fell bulleted. If it's the latter, you can set her up for it using Roseate Desire for a quad weakness to such. It also likewise amps her wrath resistance to fatal levels too. Otherwise, you can just slash her when the time comes if you don't need to kill things out of order or rush to their deaths. As for Callisto Lu, I plan on killing him off first, especially for that somatic frisson inspiring melody. He is going to be a wet noodle without additional ring members to boost him up, especially since the only other one involved in my planned composition will be his apprentice. To that end though, he can at least give her an offensive level boost and grant some ego resources before he inevitably gets cut in half. Next, we're looking at Albina Faust. He is going to be killed last, most likely. He has many other uses, especially as she boosts up in speed. Being one of the sinners to live longer, we're actually going to try and get the most use out of her early on. This means attempting to get her to flow states and abusing the bleed infliction she has to offer. That's in all of the debuffs going out. Past there, as the last to die, I'd planned for some potential ego use. Mostly staring at Everlasting rather than anything else, but that's something to abuse for later. Then comes the last one we have for now, Renclair. His buff is too nice to pass up, and like hell we're going to chew through everyone else before getting to him. If we can fell bullet him early on, I reckon that's the best course of action, though that requires a lot of setup, and honestly, he can just play as normal to profit off of his slash damage. Otherwise, the combo is the Harmony into fell bullets, which requires Yi-Sung to live significantly longer. Past there, we've got to look at non-House of Spiders for now. Currently, that is Musou, Heathcliff, Rodya, Otis, and Gregor. Each are a tad troublesome to make use of for now. A few of them might be able to come in though. Musou is actually someone I'd consider fielding, mainly because of his two IDs that he brings to the table here. The first is Capo Salt. He brings much needed slough into this composition that allows us to use Harmony to begin with, or Unbrilliant Glory. His burn application is also quite solid, allowing us to upkeep it relatively well, at least until it gets bursted. But that much can be fixed and made stable by bringing a certain other fellow along. He also has a bunch of slash damage skills, letting him abuse those blade trail after images as well. Now, unfortunately, the Capo has a limited time of effectiveness directly tied to his bullets. But that's fine, since by the time he runs out, most of the House of Spiders should be dead, and he's here to spam out egos instead. Here, he is functionally a one-man Tremor plan, since he can abuse Capote to mirror burn into Tremor, and with the assistance of Say and Everlasting from a very fast member of the House of Spiders, well, we can cash out Tremor Scorch in a real funky way. Also, if we can then slap that onto Crush Bound Past. As for the alternative, it's the Hornet. The bee with a shotgun is ridiculously good at upkeeping burn thanks to spores. This pays out far more in long horde-based encounters where he can rack up kills and otherwise benefit from loyalty pheromones more. While not able to give us a grand finisher of any kind, the consistent spread of burn and some application of bleed does directly benefit Ryoshu. Using him pretty much kills any slough that would otherwise be here, making you pretty much all in on burn. There is a partner he can take, however, to alleviate this. Otherwise, in terms of egos, we'd be running Regrets, Capote, and Crushbound for Mussault's backup wombo combo. As for the last fella I'd consider fielding alongside, we'd be looking at Gregor. There are two IDs here to consider, likewise paired with the above. Fire Fist would be the Capo's best friend. While not essential to have on the field right away, he does stabilize burn count the moment he arrives, letting it build up more seamlessly. He also just deals a metric fuck ton of damage, and has super easy conditionals on pretty much everything. He is John Byrne. This gives Ryoshu a stupid stable way of getting her dual status application with zero issues. It's also particularly brain dead for getting Wrath and additional conditions going as required for egos. The alternative that you would pair up with the Hornet though is the Stabby Man, Night Owl's Capitano Gregor. He basically supplements for the lack of slough on his skill 1 while provisioning some decent damage output and bleed. While the Tremor is going to 100% be wasted here without some support from Boss and Merceau, any amount of Tremor that comes comes out gets use purely from his wounds debuffs, those of which do help to stem bleeding, but without more reliable application it can be rather negligible. Anyhow, both of these Gregors have access to one of the single best egos in the game that only gets better with this specific composition, Unbrilliant Glory. This thing gains him Man in the Scabbard stacks whenever damage is taken or allies otherwise get staggered or killed. He then gets to nuke things at full stacks for a nasty amount of damage and even burst tremor. Heck, it refunds him some ego resources and helps him wipe out hordes with its attack weight too. This is way too good to pass up really. The only unfortunate thing is the buff itself gives him aggro, which makes it harder to let other fellas get killed, I suppose. Alternatively, you can say fuck it to Unbrilliant and Tremor as a whole and just run Fire Fist with the Hornet for a ton of Wrath support and burn counts that will never move. It is more brain dead than you'd expect and doesn't require any ego use outside of perhaps magic bullets. For the rest, they're riding the bench. Rodya takes LCB since we can indeed amass a good amount of Wrath to get things going for that sweet 20%. Chi Heathcliff is actually perfect here since we can make an ally take significantly more damage with an easy to accomplish Wrath Resonance. 20% more damage taken goes a long way in getting them killed. Otis has 3 potential options to make use of. The first is LCB, being a flat 30% to enemies with lower than 0 SP. This may end up being on Gregor or Maso unless you throw things at them too, but nonetheless is more possible to achieve. The next is Blade Lineage Otis. Double tap is easier to fix onto Ryoshu, but comes with the major caveats of needing the enemies to be below 25% HP. It is, however, very set and forget in terms of passives. If Eugen ever came to Limbus, this would absolutely be their bane. Last is Magic Bullet Otis. Now, if for some reason you want to fuck around and find out, you can bring Magic Bullet Otis in for multiple reasons. The first would be to use Request Work, her passive. This just bumps up ego damage, more if it costs over 7 resources. Great Trichiliocosm is just that. If you want that to nuke harder for some reason, can go ahead and use it. Otherwise, she can come in and spam Magic Bullets herself, allowing us to cash in on Dark Flame for a pretty nasty damage nuke. Conveniently, she can also Magic Bullet herself to give someone else that slot if needs must. Else giving Ryoshu 4 slots to fuck around and find out is still rather decent, all things considered. With all of that out of the way, we need to discuss play patterns. This one is going to be very jank and subject to massive change as we eventually get the rest of the Nurse Fathers and Apprentice. That said, we'll update those per kit video once they come out. In this specific case, deployment is everything. Ryoshu targets the ally with the lattermost deployment for her Tianxia friendly fire shenanigans, meaning we need to sequence IDs according to when we need them murdered, especially in the case of getting Nurse Fathers prioritized first. In this specific case, we're deploying 10 Sinners in order to let Ryoshu consume slots earlier, or running the Unga Bunga Burn Bros. First is Ryoshu for herself, followed by Hornet, Fire Fist, and Magic Bullet. This forms the core of a burn engine that'll let us keep her conditionals healthy and otherwise grant us a finisher. Next is Index Dawn, Renclair, and Hongers, followed by Rian and the other 2 apprentices. Since we're not planning on killing anyone out of order this time, this setup works fine. Now turn 1 is pretty straightforward. Evade with Ryoshu, defensive for Renclair, the rest of the house can just send it, Hornet can get the spores going. Ryoshu murders Hongers first here. Ideally, you get him to use a Pride skill before he leaves, which should be quite easy with his skill 1 being such. Turn 2 is much the same. Double defenses for the Pinkies. More burn for the Hornet. You can jokingly throw out a fell bullet with Rian if you'd like, but otherwise just leave them all to their fates. Ryoshu will kill 2 more allies this turn, including Yi Sung, bringing us to our last 7 now. Ensure Yi Sung uses Pride, same with as many others who can, since our goal is the Magic Bullet. Turn 3. You could just execute 2 more allies if you'd really like, and this would leave Sinclair alone, remaining alongside the Hornet, Fire Fist, and Magic Bullet. Alternatively, you can get Ryoshu going now and let the rest live a little longer. Thanks to the prior executions, she will have at least 50 Dehui Star Blade after using pretty much any skill here regardless, letting us dump out the skill 3-3 and subsequently the skill 3-2 on the following turn. If you decide to nuke 2 teammates, it'll be a little more stable since the evade also builds poise, but if you need damage now, use a base skill instead. Skill 1 or 2 is preferred, as skill 3 will just eat the poise without giving any back. Skill 1 is also fantastic for getting poise potency stacked up. Personally though, I would recommend just slashing through your teammates, since more slots to Ryoshu does let her use egos easier. Turn 4 is to just let Ryoshu cut loose and nuke with her skill 3-2. Since she has her Shin now, the poise is actually surprisingly healthy. If you've got the Pride to Magic Bullet, now is the time. Otherwise, you can use one of Ryoshu's slots on 4th Match Flame this turn. Renclair is also likely to be decently built up now. You can just let him do his job as John Slash. Turn 5 is where you start pivoting to your finishers of choice. Since the plan is magic bullets, if you haven't already, you are slamming it. If you already have, you are still slamming it, if possible. Ryoshu should murder the remaining house members if there are any left. This would be Renclair alone if you killed 2 or more on turn 3, or the 2 apprentices left before him. If the target isn't dead, what the hell are you doing? You likely have another Echo Shear and multiple slots to Ryoshu's name at this point. Slot in Great Trichiliocosm and let rip. Between the rest of the team's affinities, you should be able to get this out easily. Even better if you get this on the exact slot 4th Match Flame would trigger on. Though counting that may be a tad painful. Regardless, this ID is stupid flexible. You basically have half of Exodia on demand currently. There are many other potential game plans, but this is realistically speaking one of the more stable and boring ones. And it still involves killing your team aggressively. I suppose once the newer guys come out or have to tag onto their guides, how does this affect the Blade of House of Spiders build and game plan? Not exactly looking the most forward to that, but hey, it's just 3 more IDs from the house to go now, I suppose. Once again, thanks for listening in and using me as second monitor content. This one was a bloody long one. Really just the single longest one. At least in terms of sheer scripts for a single ID. It's kind of funny that this is the case too, since the IDs attached to this team have had some of the shortest justification required. Anyhow, if you'd like to see more guides or lore videos in the future, subscribe to the channel. If this video gave you any build IDs or a base to start with, like it below. Going further with support, you can donate to Ko-Fi or join up on the Patreon like Artie and Derp over there. Or heck, come hang out in the community Discord. It's gotten very lively there recently. Again, thanks for using me as second monitor content or just listening in general. We'll be back with more over the weekend, I suppose. Appreciate you tuning in.